I think one of the coolest sequences recently in any superhero movie has to be the dominoes scene from Deadpool 2. I think it really shows how someone with extreme luck works. It's cool to see all these accidents sort of coalesce to make things really easy for Domino to get into this truck and take out the bad guys and take control of it. I don't think we'll have anything that cool in this video, but let's read, shall we? What cool thing did you accidentally do? Story 1. My sophomore year in high school, I was on the water polo JV team. During one of our tournaments, we managed to, unfortunately, be stuck in the last game. It happened to be the day of the homecoming dance, and several of the guys on the team had dates. Our town was about an hour away, and it was approaching 5 p.m. I was a good, strong swimmer, and probably the one with the most long-term endurance. However, my dribbling and shooting were abysmal. The fourth quarter, in the last minute or two, we tied up the game. I can't remember if I stole the ball or if someone else did, but I ended up with the ball with only the goalie in front of me. I dribbled the ball down the pool to the goal, but I had a problem. I could only do dry shots, where you pull yourself up and launch the ball after pulling your arm back, and couldn't do wet shots, where you shoot as part of your stroke. Unfortunately, there was a defender at my heels on my shooting side, so with the goal rapidly approaching to the point of no return, I did the only thing I could think of doing. I grabbed the ball with my right shooting hand and spun 360 degrees left away from the defender. The defender raced past me but was unable to turn around to properly guard me. While protecting my eyes as much as possible to keep from losing my contacts, the sun shining directly into my eyes, I saw through the splashing water the smallest bit of the net. I launched the ball toward the open space I had briefly seen from the back, as I didn't have to properly square my hips, and scored with seconds left on the game clock. We won and had a very short post-game talk, almost literally, "Great shot, Ben. Let's go so you guys can get ready for the dance." My family then went to a restaurant in the same city as the tournament and celebrated my great-grandma's birthday. Was his great-grandma in the audience watching the game? That would have been pretty cool. It sounds like he deserved a little bit of a dessert. Why wasn't he going to the dance? Did he not have a date? Story 2. I was in the Army stationed in Korea for my hardship tour, a mandatory deployment you have to take after you finish basic and MOS training. I was a cook, and on my first day at my duty station, I was assigned to cut vegetables until the sergeant decided to give me a permanent placement. Of course, like anywhere else in the world, hazing was a thing, so unbeknownst to me, a tall guy decided to come up behind me and try to scare me. I was the smallest girl in the room. My non-slick shoes weren't non-slick, so my balance was already compromised, and I was focusing on not cutting my fingers off while trying to maintain my balance. In short, I was not in the mood to be messed with. When the guy came up behind me, he stuck his fingers in my sides and yelled, scaring me so much I jumped up a little and made this yap sound like a Pomeranian. Everyone else in the kitchen was laughing with the guy until I spun around and bared my teeth at him. When I get upset or frustrated, I clench my teeth, but I had something to say to the butthole, so ergo baring my teeth. I also have a habit of gesticulating with my hands, with the knife still in one. In the military, you're trained to hold knives point down so you don't accidentally hurt yourself. So here I am, the shortest girl in the kitchen, eyes glaring, teeth bared, gesturing with my knife at his crotch because our height difference put my hand at the perfect placement, and growling because I couldn't unclench my jaw. "Don't do that again." He put his hands up, backed away slowly, and the kitchen was deathly quiet. I didn't notice anything as I turned back to cutting up veggies. Nobody messes with me after that. For being the smallest person in the room, it probably could have gone very bad for her. I could see how in any other time she would have spun around and maybe not had enough fire to sell this, and people would have laughed at her anyway. like how they would laugh at a little dog being vicious. I'm glad to see it worked in her favor. I'm glad she could stand up to someone and be taken seriously. Story 3. The paintballing thing reminded me of my only experience with it. In high school, with all my cousins who were in town for Christmas, and it was a family activity, so I went despite being the least sporty person in my family by a lot. By sheer luck, I did pretty well, probably because I had zero sporty clothes, so borrowed my dad's old camo he still had from the army for some reason, which surprisingly worked great to just not getting hit. Also, it was cold, and when I did get hit, the balls were half frozen, and the camo was so thick they'd bounce off, not break and splatter, which my cousins decided for that game meant no paint equals no out. So I just didn't mention it hurt like hell so as not to bring the fun down, and it gave the illusion I was untouchable. I wasn't great, but I wasn't bad either. And by the end of the day, I was so jumpy, I was just shooting anything that moved as everyone else was so much faster than me. I was trigger happy. It got down to a final fight against another team of strangers, and I had no idea I was the last one of my cousins still in the game. It went on so long, and it was cold and muddy, and we were all done. I saw an opponent peek over a cover and shot at it. By pure chance, I hit him. Not him exactly, but apparently he'd been raising his gun to call surrender, and I shot his hand, knocking the gun to the ground and giving us a very questionable win. My cousins freaked and called me ruthless and badass for years after that. Never mentioned that it was a total fluke, though, 'cause it's kinda nice. I had a similar situation in paintball once. I was shot at from someone out of the blue, and the paintball, for some reason, just bounced off me. It wasn't cold or anything. The guy that shot me called for a judgment call. The judge came over and said, "You were shot, weren't you?" I said, "No. Take a look," and pointed to where the unbroken ball was. He saw it, judged it as, "Nope, it didn't hit me. Keep playing." Story 4. I've got 2 things that happened in the same vacation my family went on this summer. So we were going across the country to see relatives on my dad's side because pretty much everyone on his side lives over there. And we rented out a small lakeside house from one of my dad's friends for our first week there. One of my uncles came over to visit with us, and we were playing catch with those little water footballs that can get pretty heavy when they absorb a lot of water. Anyway, me and my brother were out a little ways in the lake just chilling, and my uncle throws the water football right at us. It skips off the surface and is about to hit my brother right in the back of the head. He was facing away from the shore when I just reach out and catch it right as it's about to hit him. The second time was at the end of the vacation when we were saying goodbye to that same uncle outside of the restaurant he worked at. My brother was wearing sweatpants with kind of shallow pockets, and his phone was about half out of his pocket and was about to fall out. So his phone falls out of his pocket, and I just bend down and catch it before it hits the ground, and then just stand up and hand it to him. Story 5. I remember something similar to the paintball story happening to me during a friendly airsoft match. I had one of my nephews with me who had wanted to join, and everyone understood to go easy on him as he was new and didn't know what he was doing. Well, this one guy who is a bit annoying but is otherwise a good guy kept picking on him. He went out of his way to get my nephew out and just all around made the game very unenjoyable for him. Finally, I decided to confront him, and I told him to leave my nephew the hell alone. Well, he didn't like that, so he just decided to point his airsoft pistol right at me. Well, I didn't appreciate that, so I went to swat it aside, but when my hand hit his gun, my finger caught the trigger guard and somehow the gun turned around, and when I felt the handle, I instinctively gripped it and brought it to bear on its owner. On the outside, I didn't let anything show, but internally I was freaking out trying to figure out what I did and how I did it. Needless to say, my friend finally got my point, and I handed him his pistol back, and we were able to salvage the rest of the day, and my nephew ended up having a good bit of fun. Story 6. This year in high school, I was 14, and I was entering the building when all of a sudden a fight took place on the other side of the street. Some teachers on the entrance went to stop them, but we didn't know anything about the fight after that since we cared more for class. After school was over, everyone got out of the building and they were looking at a big group of students, the class of the 2 students that started the fight earlier, that were chatting on the other side of the street. Everyone was scared of them because they didn't want to get beaten up by them. Now, the problem was that they were blocking the way to my home, so instead of crossing the street again going that way from the other side, I decided that I was too lazy for that and just decided to walk through them. I got in and out and kept my way. The next day at school, I realized that the guys blocking the side were actually the class that I mentioned before. I didn't know that. And to my surprise, everyone saw what I did, so they told me I was crazy or began asking me how did I do that. It was a fun experience, as I could have been stabbed really fast that day. That was a fun little story until we got to that last sentence. I didn't realize that the situation would have been that dangerous for him. In my school, people got in fights, but no one got stabbed. I guess in that regard, I consider myself very lucky. Story 7. This was during my senior year. We were playing pinball in gym. Dodgeball, but with 3 bowling pins on both teams. I was one of the last people on my team. I had a habit of being an ambush thrower. I'd wait for someone to throw a ball at someone else until I ran up and hit them. But of course, that wasn't much of an option. Being absolutely sure I was going to lose, I continued on, with the other team being stocked up with throwing balls. It was at this moment I somehow, out of some miracle, unlocked Ultra Instinct. I dodged balls left and right like it was absolutely nothing, deflected some of them with the ball in my hands, and fired a barrage of the balls they threw at me. Heck of a comeback, as most of my team was brought back in. I was a freaking ninja at that moment. Then I got hit dead center in the bridge of my nose. I wore glasses, so it slammed those into my face too. I was fine, but that ended my streak. But despite that, I relished my classmates' impressed reactions to my short, brief, but also sweet glory as I ever so smoothly dodged an entire team of ball throwers while the moment lasted. Story 8. This happened during a winter that actually had snow instead of a bunch of rain. I live in the southern USA. My dad, bro, mom, and I thought it would be a good idea to play in the snow with sledding, snowballs, the whole 9 yards, as it was a rare occurrence. Snow has only stuck to the ground twice during my 20 years of life. And even then, it wasn't the good snow either. At one point during sledding, I was on the toboggan/sled by myself and began going down the hill fast. Due to the direction of the sled and my small 10-year-old body didn't do a lot to stop it, I was careening straight towards my mom. She widened her legs and jumped out of the way and fell to the side as I had placed my hands into the snow to brake myself. One hand got out of the snow, and I did a 360 spin Tokyo Drift style with my eyes closed out of fear, out of instinct. Mom and Dad asked if I was okay, and I just sat there terrified. I ran over my mom to see her getting up laughing. I still don't know what I did, but afterwards we made tiny snowmen. Story 9. So I actually have a story for this. Back in high school senior year, we were playing baseball. Now, mind you, our school had a rule about baseball, as the ball was smaller and harder and could cause more injury if it hit you. We weren't allowed to play it and had to use a softball. Our PE teacher didn't give a damn and let us do what we wanted because we were her favorite class that semester. Cue us all playing baseball. Half of us are the girls' softball team, half are basketball, and half are these strangely athletic auto shop kids. I was a non-athletic marching band kid, but I took the sport seriously enough to maintain good cardio, knew how to baseball. So our school's star hitter and one of our starting pitches were doing their thing, like around 60 to 75 miles per hour softball pitches. I was playing shortstop, At least I think that's what it was called. Position between second and third plate. Pitcher wound up and sent it. Batter slammed it in my direction. Instantly, I shot out my hand as soon as I heard contact and caught it. Probably the coolest thing I did back then. I was not the most athletic kid. Plus, I was socially awkward, so I had trouble communicating or taking direction on how to deal with something from a team. I didn't mind baseball. I tried to not be afraid of the ball and tried to make catches. Unfortunately, people could sense my fear and they would usually hit the ball in my direction as a way to get like an easy on base.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 10. I was only 7 years old, and I had only been on the bunny slope for the first time skiing that day when my dad decided that I could handle more difficulty. I think it was a blue square slope. It was the kind of slope you had to ski jumping left to right to get down safely. Needless to say, the only thing I knew how to do was snowplow, where you turn the front of your skis forward together to try and slow yourself down. But unfortunately, I only picked up speed and realized I'm gonna expire. So I put my ski poles back, tucked myself in like Goofy did on a Disney cartoon, and prayed for the best. I managed to get all the way to the bottom, started trying to snowplow, caught my other ski, which forced me into a hard turn and bringing me to a complete stop right in front of where you lean your skis up when you go inside. My dad thought he had a prodigy, and I vowed never to go skiing again and still haven't to this day. Story 11. One winter I was walking to the train station, and while crossing at an intersection, this guy in a red sports car who was not paying enough attention makes a left-handed right for me. For a moment, time seemed to slow down as my mind raced through my options. It was icy, so if I tried to run out of the way, I could slip and end up under the tires. Standing there and just taking the full impact could cause serious damage. Then something in the back of my mind told me to dive onto the hood of the car. So I did. Once on the hood of this car, I felt my body begin to twist, and not wanting severe damage to my spine, I rolled in the direction of the twisting, rolling off his car and into a superhero landing next to it as he came to a stop. I stood up completely uninjured as he rolled down the window and frantically asked if I was okay, and in a state of shock, I just said, "Yeah," and continued my walk to the train station. Story 12. This one isn't super awesome, but I am incredibly clumsy and poorly coordinated, so it was a pretty cool moment for me. A few months back, some of my friends and I were at the pool, and two of my male cousins and my boyfriend were messing around with a floating foam ball, playing catch and trying to bean each other in the face. I was standing in the pool by the edge, talking with my sister and our friend. One of my cousins, who is my sister's best friend, lobbed the ball at us, trying to hit her. His aim was off and it came straight at the spot behind my ear. Just before it hit me, I coincidentally shifted forward ever so slightly so it skimmed past me and bounced onto the deck. I couldn't see it coming for me because it was just out of my peripheral vision, but to everyone else, it looked like I casually dodged a projectile while keeping a perfectly straight face and carrying on a conversation. That probably looked so cool. That looked like, hey, nothing phases me, don't even try. I wonder if the boyfriend had anything to say after that. Maybe he should have, stood up and called them out for trying to pick on his girlfriend like that. Story 13. I myself had an incredible dodgeball moment. It was PE in elementary, and the two classes of my grade were up against each other. It was also the last period of class. Growing up, I was more active than I am now, but I was still no athlete of the sort. Either way, as the game went on, I was somehow the last person left standing. It was almost time for class to end, and I was outnumbered. The entire other class was basically against me at this point, and all had the dodgeballs. There I was, standing with no ball in hand. As they all threw the dodgeballs at me, I ducked and closed my eyes. Every single ball had missed me and gone past me. Then, as the bell rang right after, The teacher declared my class the winner by default since all the balls were in my zone. I single-handedly won the dodgeball match due to sheer luck, and it was glorious. Story 14. I was playing a game of dodgeball, and I'm not the best at throwing, so I never went to get a ball, so I usually was looked at as an easy target, as I was unarmed. One of my friends on the other team decided it would be a great idea to get as close as possible to me and throw it at me. This guy is a star pitcher for our baseball team, so when he threw it, it was fast and hard. It hit me right in the face, knocking my nose upward. It wasn't broken, but definitely hurting. In a few seconds, he runs over to me asking if I'm okay, as my nose drips thick red blood. I wiped the blood off, even though it was still dripping, and won the game. Everyone thought I was the one, even though I looked like a freaking psycho with blood dripping from my face and my hair soaked with sweat. Story 15. The only badass moment I had was in freshman year college. I had lent a number of female friends money for coffee, books, etc. before financial aid came in. Well, I'm talking to this dude I just met, nicknamed Madeira, but that's a different story. And these girls, one after another, just walked up to me and handed me cash, hugged me, and thanked me. After the fourth, he just kind of looked at me. Well, another girlfriend of mine saw this and thought it would be fun to walk up, hand me a 20, kiss my cheek and say, "Thanks, Daddy," wink and walk away. I didn't even cover her buying something. She just thought it would be funny, I later found out. I played it off. He asked me, "What the hell?" and I told him to worry about the game, Magic the Gathering. So, yeah, once and only time. Story 16. It happened back when I was in 6th grade. One of the more annoying kids in our class was trying to be funny by walking up to people, hugging them, and then saying, "Do you feel violated?" After doing that to a couple of his friends, he eventually got to me. He came up from behind me, so I had no idea he was there. All of a sudden, I hear footsteps and, "Do you feel violated?" as he closes in for the hug. I quickly spun around, and my hand shot out directly at his throat. He immediately drops to the floor in the middle of the classroom, gasping for air. He dropped so fast that not even the teacher saw it. Needless to say, he never tried anything like that again. Story 17. I was messing around on a ledge in high school. It's not high, it's just a 7 or 8 foot drop. I slipped, fell, and in my attempt to save myself, I grabbed on the ledge with my left hand, failed, but that was enough for me to land on my foot. Not wanting to embarrass myself any further, I walked to my friends and pretended it was nothing, but in reality, my arm and my spheres were hurt. I'm guessing it was tugged by gravity. Confused me heard them saying that was cool and stuff. Hours later, I asked my best friend what the hell happened, and he told me I looked like I used my hand to help me turn, bring my feet down and my head up, and he said my face looked calm during the fall, like I knew I could save myself. My face was just frozen in fear. Story 18. I was in gym class in 4th grade back when the slide was a popular thing. We were playing a game where we had teams of 5 that lined up on one side of the gym and 5 people with pool noodles on the other side who were called monsters. The goal for the teams was to get past the monsters and grab a toy from the pile behind them. But only one person from each team could go at a time. It was finally my turn, and I decided to be special and do the slide once I got to the other side. Apparently, one of the monsters was coming straight at me and completely missed me because of the slide I did. After grabbing the toy, I looked back at my teammates and they were all going feral over it. Really felt like a hero. Story 19. I was in the 7th grade. That day, we happened to be playing a game of baseball. I'm not particularly a sports enthusiast, so I just talked with my friends while we were on the outfield. I remember us talking about something funny, and I outstretched my hand in a humored gesture. It turns out, just as I had moved my hand, a ball had been flying towards us, and promptly it landed in my hand. There was a moment of silence. We were all flabbergasted. After I came back to my senses, I played it off coolly and threw the ball back to the pitcher. And that was that. Sometimes my friends bring it up, even today. Story 20. I have a cool story for this. I was in my last year of middle school, and during my PE class, we were doing a track unit. We did hurdles for the day, and I was the first person to actually do real hurdles with a couple other people. So I was off to a good start, and all of a sudden, I felt my airborne balance fail on me, and I was beginning to fall on my side. I rolled over my shoulder, which killed it, but seemed awesome to the people watching. They were complimenting me even though I didn't know what happened. Story 21. Took a bow in front of a pretty girl I liked, and my hat fell off. I caught it, straightened up, and then flipped it into the air from waist level. The hat did a double flip in the air and landed squarely on my head. The girl was talking to someone. She saw it, stopped talking, and doubled over laughing. I couldn't think of anything to follow up with because I was an awkward teenager.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.